Family couldn't understand who was sitting behind their walls, but then somebody suggested to use an infrared camera. Every house has its own weird noises and quirks that it makes, just ask any homeowner. That's why when one pest control specialist received a call about a noise in the wall, he didn't think too much of it. However, as soon as he removed a brick from the wall, he got a surprise he wasn't expecting at all. Around late September, one family living in their house in Tennessee began to hear some strange noises coming from their walls. They couldn't quite understand what the noises were, so they assumed that an animal had possibly gotten stuck. After all, that's not that uncommon. It's actually pretty frequent for animals to get stuck between the walls of homes, especially when the weather gets colder. However, as the months passed by, the noises didn't seem to go away. The homeowners were beginning to get worried as the noises only got worse. That's when the family came to the conclusion that it had to be an insect problem. Then they decided to invest in a DIY bug bomb and deployed it in the walls. At that point, they thought for sure they'd gotten rid of the noise problem. However, the bug bomb didn't seem to fix the problem at all. The noise was still lingering in the walls, and the family decided that at this point that they needed to call a professional. So the family called up pest control specialist David Glover. David felt quite confident that if there were any bugs at all, he would be able to get them out. After all, David has had years of experience in getting rid of rodents and bugs. However, nothing could have prepared him for what he would soon discover in the walls. As David was looking around the house, he soon discovered a weep hole, a small opening that allows water to drain from. Then he discovered another small gap between the kitchen and the window and the brick. He figured that these openings could have been an entry point for an animal. David decided that in order to get an idea of what was lodged in the wall, that he would use his infrared camera. The camera is able to pick up on heat, which would allow David to see what was hiding inside the walls. However, when David got back to the images, he was shocked by the size of whatever was hiding in their home. David immediately decided to attempt and smoke out whatever was in the walls, just in case they were incredibly dangerous. He also began to put out some natural insect repellent to prevent them from escaping to other parts of the walls. While the insects were stunned by the gases, David decided to continue to open up the weeping hole some more. As he removed the brick, his suspicions were immediately confirmed. You won't believe what he found inside. As David removed the brick, he realized that the intruders in the house was a hive of busy honeybees. The honeycomb was enormous, and David knew that this was going to be a difficult removal. He knew this wasn't going to be easy at all. As David continued to remove each layer of brick, he only began to get more and more overwhelmed. Each layer only revealed more and more of the beehive. It seemed as if the beehive was never ending. David continued removing layer after layer of bricks. Soon he had managed to remove 5 whole layers. When he finally saw just how massive the beehive was, he couldn't believe his eyes. It almost didn't feel real. The hive was the most enormous one that David had ever seen in his entire life. The honeycomb practically took up a whole chunk of the house. Everyone was in shock that something that massive had been hiding inside of the walls. As David began to inspect the situation, he noticed that the honeycomb had 13 capped queen cells, each with a separate virgin queen bee. It was obvious to David that this honeycomb wasn't just taking up space, it was continuing to expand more and more. As David continued to look through, he noticed that there was a large amount of dead bees on the left-hand side. That was where the family had managed to detonate the home bug bomb. However, that small bomb was no match against an entire colony of bees. Although David knew that the colony couldn't continue to live inside of the walls of the house, he didn't want to exterminate them. He couldn't rightfully contribute to the effects of the mass bee deaths occurring all throughout the globe. So instead, he figured out a way to relocate them. David started to remove chunks of the honeycomb from the house, and it soon began to get quite trippy. At one point, David described the situation as if the construction crew in this part of the hive was dropping acid. That's how intricate the curves and tunnels of the honeycomb's construction was. Even though David was basically ripping apart their home, the bees were surprisingly very cooperative. In fact, a few of the bees even landed on David's shoulders and rested on him. This made relocating them even easier than he expected. Once David had completely cleared out the area, he was amazed by the imprint left behind. Kind of cool when you think about all the times your mom told you to wipe your feet before coming into the house, David said jokingly. Now, David will begin delivering the bees over to various honey farms. By delivering some bees over to the farms, David hopes to help out many of the farmers that have been dealing with colony losses. After all, bees are an essential part of our ecosystem.